All right,
Okay,
Kelly,
hi
it's all yours.
everyone. Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Like Jen said, we'll do questions at the end, and we also have a PDF of the presentation, so you'll be able to go back and access it. But we'll go ahead and get started. So these are your pathways after high school. Pretty much everyone's going to fall into one of these pathways. Just wanted to reiterate, we're going to speak really about universities and state college and community college tonight on this presentation, but definitely feel free to reach out to your career specialist at your own high school if you'd like to talk about any of the other pathways or follow up on any of the presentation from tonight. So the first thing that I'm going to go over is the current admission standards. This is put out by the state every year to show us who was admitted into our Florida public universities last year. So the matrix is from the class of 23, and this is not really to be used to deter you from applying anywhere or to determine where you're going to apply. It's really just to make note of, is this going to be a reach school for me, a match school, or a safety school? And also will help us know the types of transcripts they use and transcript requirements and important deadlines. So this is the first 6. And like I said, we're going to have the PDF of this. So I'm not going to go over this, but I want to show you how to read one of these. So we'll go ahead and look at Florida State, and we can see it's in Tallahassee, how many students, and that does include grad students, so about 44,000. It'll tell us the type of application that they use. So you can apply with the institutional application, which would be at fsu.edu, or you can use the Common App, which we'll talk about a little bit later tonight. Then it's going to show the mid 50% acceptance for the GPA, SAT, and ACT. So if we look at GPA, you can see for summer admission, which will be slightly lower than fall admission, last year, the mid 50% that were admitted for summer had a 4.1 to a 4.5 weighted GPA, and for fall, a 4.3 to a 4.6. And then SAT for summer was a 1230 to 1320, and fall a 1340 to 1450. And then it'll also show the ACT scores for summer and fall. And remember, this is the mid 50%. So students were admitted lower and some were admitted higher, but just to give you a general range. I will say, based on the admissions for this year, all of these numbers have ticked up just a little bit. For example, with FSU, summer was about 1280 to 1380. And fall was 1380 to 1480. We certainly had students getting in lower than that, but that was their mid 50%. And then this is going to be the final 6 of our Florida public universities. But again, we'll have this in the PDF at the end of the night so that you'll be able to go back and access this and look at the numbers. So with all of the schools, they're going to be recalculating the students' GPA. And what they're going to use is they're going to use a core weighted GPA. So they're going to basically take out all of the electives, aside from any academic or AP electives, and they're going to look at English, math, science, social studies, and your foreign language. So just to reiterate, for foreign language, students must have 2 years of foreign language to attend a 4-year university, and they also will need it for Bright Futures. So very important to make sure that you get those 2 years in before graduation. And it's fine if one of those years ends up being senior year. If a student is retaking a class, then they're going to usually use both grades when recalculating the GPA. So that's going to be called the core weighted GPA, is what the schools will be using. And I did want to also say this at this time, they're going to be using 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. So with 12th grade, students will have to list the courses that they're taking in 12th grade. And then, of course, they'll have to send a final transcript. But most of the schools are not going to be using any 12th grade grades because we're going to be applying well before we have any senior semester grades, which would come out in January. We want all of our applications in by November 1st. If you're deferred, the school may allow you to submit that first semester senior grade, but in general, it's going to be 9th, 10th, and 11th together. It's going to be what the admissions committee will be looking at. So like I said, you can use Common Application to apply, and that's probably where I'd say 99.9% of students are going to use to apply, because there are almost 1,000 members on there. All of our Florida schools are on there, out-of-state schools, Ivy League schools. So it really allows them to basically apply everywhere with this one application. Students can use the application to apply to 20 different schools. It'll also help them to track the deadlines and admission criteria. Your counselor or career specialist can apply a fee waiver if the student qualifies for free or reduced lunch, and that would give them 20 free application fees. Usually in Florida, the application fee is about $35, but if it's an out-of-state or an Ivy League school, it can even go up to $100.
Ashley, can
So
you
that
bring
would
my
be,
dish?
what's
Thanks
that?
so much.
Just make sure you're on mute.
Okay. And these are our Common App Florida schools. So you can see all of our Florida public universities are on here, as well as several private schools that students will apply for. These are just Florida, but they're all over the nation. But definitely, these, if you're applying to more than one of these, you would want to use Common App. The only reason you would not use Common App is if you were only going to apply to, let's say, USF. That's usually what I'll see is a student says they want to go to USF. If they don't get into USF, they're going to go to PHSC and then do the transfer program. If that's the case, you probably would not want to go through an entire common application. You could just apply to usf.edu. And then again, if they go there, that's great. If they don't, they'll apply to PHSC, but you wouldn't have to do everything else. If you're applying to more than one school, definitely Common App is the way to do it.
Kelly, you got muted.
Are we okay?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, perfect. I'm not sure why that's muting. Let me get back to my presentation here. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. So once you make a account at Common App, they will choose first year student for that. And then basically the first tab that I would go to is the college search tab. And on the college search tab, I like to use the filter and actually just choose Florida. You can do it by state, and there'll be about 32 colleges that come up, and they can go ahead and just add any school that they're looking to apply to. Obviously, if out of state, you could just continue to search and add what you'd like. But this is a great way to just start your list. Then in the Common App tab, this is why it's called Common App, because they'll just fill this out one time for all of the schools. So they'll do their profile, their family and education. That's where they'll put like their GPA and their rank, as well as their senior courses. Testing is where they could put SAT and ACT scores. Their activity section, they can list 10 activities. This would include everything from work to sports, volunteering clubs, extracurricular activities, personal interests, passion projects, anything like that. They'll have 10 spaces for that. And then the writing, the reason I like to add the college search part first, to add the schools that they're thinking about, is because when you click on the writing tab, you'll be able to see what schools will require the essay and which will not require it. And I do want to kind of clarify here, if it says not required, that means that the school is not going to consider it. So sometimes people say not required, but the student thinks if they do the essay that it would help their chances getting in, and that's not the case. These schools do not use the essay and do not read the essay. It's not part of their admissions process. But of course, if you do have at least one school that requires the essay, you will be writing the Common App essay, and that's going to be a 650-word essay on the topic of your choice. They will give some ideas for prompts, but one of the last prompts will say, or a topic of your choice. It just needs to be a personal narrative, so they can choose really anything to write about that lets the school get to know the student. And then finally, we have the My Colleges tab. This is the tab that I call Look, Don't Touch. Because right now, if they go into this tab, they can, technically they could type anything into here, but this tab is for the class of 2024, and these are the class of 2024 applications. So the class of 2025 applications will open on August 1st. So juniors now, they can make an account. They can add their schools. They can even put anything they want under that Common App tab. They technically could even put their essay in there. The My Colleges tab, they can look at the questions that will be asked for each individual school, but they would not want to write anything in here until after August 1st. But definitely great to look at the questions, get some ideas of what some of the schools may ask you, because there are some schools that will ask additional supplemental questions aside from just that main essay. And then you can see this is where you actually will submit the application. So each application will be submitted individually. So for FAMU, for instance, you would do the questions for FAMU, you would add your recommenders and sign your FERPA. You'll have to put a counselor in here, and FAMU does take a teacher recommendation, and then you would pay your $35 and submit it. And then you could open up your next one, FAU or whichever you choose, and go through the same process again. So just remember August 1st for this tab. The other tabs you can work on now. All students should be applying to universities by November 1st. That's going to give students priority consideration. So you want to definitely get those applications in earlier. I will say that for FSU, they do have early action for Florida residents. That's somewhat new. This was the second year of it. That is going to be due on October 15th. That's definitely going to give students a higher chance of getting in, and they'll also get their application decision in December instead of having to wait until February. So for FSU, I definitely would take advantage of the October 15th. For the rest of the schools, you want to get it in November 1st or earlier. Don't wait until the student has the ideal test scores to apply. You want to apply early. So, basically when we get back to school, you want to get going on those applications. Schools will continue to update your application test scores. Even if, let's say you apply with an 1100 and that's not going to get into whatever the school is. They know students are continuing to test, so that's not an issue at all. You just have to indicate when you take your SAT or ACT that you want the score sent to the school, and the school will automatically update your application. Some schools have what's called rolling admission, and you can see some of the schools that have it, quite a few in Florida for sure. I would consider applying even in September or early October for those schools, because those schools will continue to assess the applications as they are received, versus someplace like FSU and UF. Those are what are called fixed admission, where they wait for all applications to come in and then they go through their admissions process, and then all students receive the decision on the same date. So rolling, that will be different dates as students are admitted, and then fixed would be everyone getting their decision at the same time. Major really does not matter when applying to the school. If the student knows the major that they're interested in, definitely go ahead and put that on the application. But if they really have no idea what they want to do, and that's totally normal. Honestly, even when they think they know what they want to do, it does end up changing, and that's really why schools don't put a lot of credibility in the major that they put down, because 60 to 70% of freshmen are going to end up changing their major. So if they know it, go ahead and put it down, because that'll basically give them the advisor in that major. And there are some schools who have special programs for that major, where they might be able to do a different admissions if you didn't get in as a standard admit. But most schools, you can change your major throughout your sophomore year. I mean, technically you can keep changing it, but it might have you go over that normal 4 years for graduation. And just to give you an example of this, Florida State, their number 3 admitted major this year was exploratory, which is another way of saying undecided. So definitely don't feel bad by putting exploratory undecided. That's pretty typical for their admissions process. So SAR is the student self-reported academic record, and this is how students are going to report their transcript. So when I first started in this position, we would actually send the transcript from the school, and that was pretty easy. Now what they want is for students to use the system to enter the transcript themselves, because then they're able to manipulate the data. So if a student is applying to any of the schools that are listed on the screen here, they will have to complete a SAR to have a complete application. So for USF, if you were to send the transcript to USF, they would not actually do anything with the application until the SAR was complete. And so this basically involves making an account at the address above, getting a transcript either through My Student or getting one through your counselor. And then you're going to be entering the entire transcript for all high school courses that have been taken, and you would have the grade for those. And then also putting senior year courses in and putting those as in progress. So for the most part, the schools are not going to ask for the grades to be updated. UCF does, but for the most part, the other schools are not going to want to see updated senior grades, because they're making that decision from 9, 10, and 11. So definitely don't go back in and change anything unless you're specifically asked to do so. So UCF is not on this list, but they do have their own version of the SAR. So it's possible that students would have to enter their transcript in twice if they're applying to one of the SAR schools and UCF. So UCF will send the link out for this once a student applies. Dual enrollment students don't need to send their transcript for an actual application decision, but they will need to send it with whatever the school is that they decide to attend. So it's not needed to make a decision on the application, but it will be needed in order for the students to get the credit for the classes that they've taken. So that's usually going to be sent in May of their senior year, and that'll be sent through their WISE account. Students also will want to make sure that College Board and ACT are sending official test scores to the schools that they're applying to. So most schools are going to need official test scores to make a decision. Some schools will allow the test score to be reported, but that's something that you'll, again, have to read at the school website to see what they need. But if you put it into Common App, they're not going to use that, even though there is a testing area to put in test scores there. They're going to want to see it from the actual testing agency. So just for juniors, we are going to be testing at all the high schools in March for the free school day SAT. And students are going to be able to indicate 4 schools to receive their test scores. So I would work with the student to make sure that they have the 4 schools, and definitely don't waste these on private universities because most of them are test optional. You would definitely want to use those 4 score sends for Florida public universities. All schools are going to require a final transcript after graduation. And of course, they are going to look at that transcript and then look back at the SAR and make sure everything was reported correctly. They're also going to look to make sure that the senior courses that were indicated were taken and that the students did well in their senior courses. They can basically rescind an admissions decision. I don't see it often, but I definitely have seen it for some of the higher schools for students who get a case of senioritis and don't do well senior year. When students are taking AP exams, if they're, 9th, 10th, 11th, it really is not a big deal where they send their exam scores for those years. But senior year in May, when they indicate the one school they want to receive their AP exam scores, they would want to put the score of whatever the school is that they decide to go to, which obviously they'll know that by May of senior year. And then that school will get all of their AP exam scores from their entire high school career. And then again, that's going to be used for their college credits. If a student is transferring to a university and they're getting their AA degree along with their high school diploma, so they've done those 2 years of dual enrollment, they don't automatically transfer in as a junior level student through like the transfer admissions process. Obviously, they'll still get all of their credits. They're also not going to be applying as a transfer student. So in order to apply as a transfer student to a university, they have to have taken a minimum of 12 credit hours after high school, so not through dual enrollment. They will compete for admission with other freshman applicants, but basically this year was the first year we saw some of the state universities doing something a little bit different with students who got their AA degree. So on the next slide, we'll talk about that. And you can see there are some hot links that you'll be able to have in the PDF to go and read about this. So now for students with that plan to earn their AA, that is going to be a question on Common App or any application that they do. It'll ask, do you plan to earn your AA by high school graduation? And so if they put yes, and obviously they have to earn it, they're going to check on that. But if they put yes, they will get a second look. So at University of Florida, if a student does not get admitted in the freshman round, their application will be sent to the major that they selected. So if they are going to have an AA, they're definitely going to need to put a major there to get the second look. They must meet the prerequisites for that major. So the major is basically going to look at them almost as if they were a transfer student, if they did not get in the freshman round. If you're going to be a STEM major in college, this really, I don't think is going to be possible because there's just too many classes and very, very hard classes to take as the prerequisites. But if it's going to be something more general, like criminology, psychology, something like that, I've definitely seen students get in through that because there really are not a lot of prerequisites, maybe a couple. They definitely would be able to do that as part of their AA. Florida State is basically the same thing. If they don't get admitted in the freshman round, then their application would be sent to the major they selected. So the nice part with this is that the test scores are really not going to be used at that point. It's going to be the GPA in their college level courses and in their prerequisites. The other state universities, it's going to be fairly similar. They're still going to be looking at the students as a freshman first time in college, but the AA students will also receive consideration based on just their GPA if their test scores are not meeting the test score requirement for the university. Like I saw that as an example this year with USF and UCF, didn't have anything to do with the prerequisites. It's just the student was admitted based on GPA the student was not quite there. Maybe they had an 1100 and they need 1170. They were not quite there on the test scores, but they still got in because they're an AA student and they had a very high GPA. And then you can see there's some links here in the prereq manual if you want to look up any of the majors at the different universities and what the prereqs for that major would be. PHSC is a lot different. With PHSC, you just need a standard high school diploma, which is basically a 2.0. You don't need SAT or ACT scores to get admitted. They will just use those to place you in the correct classes, specifically for math. And you also don't need your 2 years of foreign language to attend. Now, you will have to take it there. It'll just be 2 semesters at the college level, but you would have to take it there in order to go on into a university through the transfer process. The benefits of classes are much, much smaller. It's half the cost of a university and also gives students a little bit of time to decide on their major. So this is really what the AA looks like. You can see it's all very much gen ed classes. So it's going to be 36 hours of general education classes and then 24 hours of elective credits, which usually ends up being the prerequisites for whatever the major is that they intend to go to. So whether a student's doing this through dual enrollment or whether they're doing this as the 2+2 program after high school, this is pretty much the classes that they'll have to take. Once they have met that AA degree, or it's usually their sophomore year, they're able to start applying as a transfer student as long as the school can see that the classes are going to be taken. As long as they have a C in their classes and higher, and they're going to have a 2.5 GPA or higher in college level courses, they can apply as a transfer student and transfer to a Florida public university. Again, they'll still want to have met the prerequisites for the program, but at this point, test scores and high school transcripts are not going to be used for any of the students that are transferring to the university. And that's kind of the benefit of having that 2 years of community college first. You will not need test scores, and the high school transcript will not be in consideration. They're really just going to be looking at the college course GPA. I'm going to skip this slide, but just for timing's sake, understand that PHSC applications will be the second semester of senior year. So January through March, the student would want to get that application on file. And a lot of our high schools will have PHSC application workshops where they'll come out and do those with students. All public universities in Florida still do require the test scores for admission, and they are still an important part of the application process. So just keep that in mind. ACT and SAT is definitely still things you want to take and want to take them multiple times. When registering for tests, and again, this includes the school day SAT coming up, make sure that you're using your 4 free score sends. When you register for those through College Board or ACT for the Saturday test, you'll be able to do the 4 free score sends at that time. But if you wait until you get the score or wait until you're applying to schools, it's going to cost $15 per school to send afterwards. So that can really start adding up. Remember, we're taking tests, but we're going to continue taking tests. So most of the schools in Florida will continue to take your test scores through December of senior year. So that's still a long time to test. UF will take through November, and the FSU, if you do the early action, which is that October 15th deadline, you can take through the December or through the November test, but everyone else will look through the December tests. The university portals is a very, very big part of the admissions process. Once a student submits their application, they are going to get an email 24 to 48 hours later from that school with directions of how to open up a university portal. And it is really critical that they do this. A lot of students really disregard all of the emails coming from universities because they think they're spam, and they're not. It has all of the information for how to open up that university portal, including their login and password. And this is where it's going to show that everything has been received by the school or what is missing from the application. It will end up showing the decision and next steps. So it is critical that students really pay attention to their emails once they start submitting those applications so that they can keep track of what's been received by the university. May 1st in general is College Decision Day. The way you would make a college decision or a commitment to the university is by paying the deposit. It's usually around $200. And once you pay that deposit, that will open up the opportunity for housing as well. If a student plans to do housing, you have to pay the admissions deposit first, and then you pay the housing deposit, and then that would basically get you in line with choosing your housing. Also, students should decline the offers from other universities. All of our universities are on a wait list at this point, so by declining an offer, that opens up an offer for another student. This is a great checklist to use. I'm not going to read it to you, but this would be something that you would use as you're applying to the schools and making sure, almost using it as a little like check mark. Did I do this? Did I do this? But this goes through SAR and making sure the scores are sent. I do want to show you number 5 though, where it says, did you attach your SAR, which remember that's that self-reported transcript, send for us, it's going to be Wesley Chapel, but whatever school, send an official transcript or have your counselor upload the transcript to Common App. This is not something where the student chooses which one. They have to know which schools require which one. And again, your career specialist can help you with that. But every school is different and what they want. The one as far as uploading to Common App is more so going to be for the private schools. So just kind of keep that in mind and work with the career specialist if you're not exactly sure which school requires which type of transcript. And then the rest, again, I'm not going to go through this with you, but just to show you that the rest of the slides are going to show kind of the step-by-step process for each of the universities and what they require, if it's official test scores or if you're able to self-report your test scores. This will just help you as you're going through the application process next year. Some of this could change. I don't expect it to, but just know this was from this year. Okay, so at this point, Jen, if you want to read any questions that might have come in with any time that we have left.
So there was a question about when applying early, does low SAT or ACT score affect you negatively?
No, it doesn't, because all of the schools understand that students are continuing to test. So I'll give you an example with USF. We want everything in by November 1st. So most students coming back in August, they're just going to have that March test score. They're going to be taking more tests, but they haven't taken them yet. You can go ahead and get your USF application out the door. It doesn't require an essay or anything, so it's pretty easy to complete. And then boom, we have a really early application dated for the university. So we're like kind of first in line, you can say. No one is going to get a USF decision until December 15th. It could change, but that's what it was this year. So it's not like they're looking at your application right away, but anyone that applies by November 1st will get a decision by December 15th. So you have still many months for them to continue to update your application. And then even this year, December 15th came around and there were several students who got something that basically said, you're deferred. So if their test scores were in, I think 1050 and below, they got something that basically said, we want more information from you. And so some of these students are still continuing to test even then. So they're not going to like flat out deny you. Like probably 2 weeks ago is when someone told me they got their first denial letter. So the schools understand everyone is continuing to test. They're going to continue to update those test scores. The important thing is just making sure every time you take the test, you're having it sent to the university so that they get the information to be able to update that application.
And then there was a question, what's the difference between a Common App and an institutional app?
So Common App is going to be where we saw all of those schools. So if you're applying to more than one school, I would definitely go through Common App. An institutional app would be if you went to fsu.edu and did the application on their website, or usf.edu and did the application on their website. So what I usually tell students is if you're only applying to USF, I would not personally go through the work of a Common App because it's going to be a lot more than they would have to do on a USF application. But that's only if they just plan to apply to USF. If they're applying to USF and UCF, you just want to go ahead and do the Common App because now you're at more than one school and you're going to have to fill everything out 2 times. If you end up doing the institutional application, you have to go to both websites. So for most students, 99.9% are probably going to use Common App, but there are going to be several students who are only applying to USF because they know they don't want to leave home. And in that case, I would just do it through usf.edu, which that's what would be considered the institutional application.
Should my students start taking tests sophomore year to practice?
Well, I mean, they can. I would say, they took the PSAT, so that's a pretty good indicator right now of where they are. I don't know that I would feel like you have to go out and take tests, but definitely starting to prep would be big. So they did take a digital PSAT, and now starting this month, March is the digital SAT. Going forward, it's going to be a digital SAT. So they kind of got an idea of how that works. I know Barron's and Princeton Review and College Board, they all put out books specifically for the digital SAT. So I would go to probably Barnes and Nobles and, spend $20, get one of the books, make sure it says digital SAT on it, and then just start doing practice. I mean, really, that's going to be the most important thing. If they want to take the ACT, they may want to go ahead and take that, but I probably would just do it junior year. They can take the PSAT again in October of junior year, and you will start seeing junior year students start to test more. But if they're a sophomore right now, I wouldn't worry too much about it. I mean, they certainly can do it, but I think the prep is really more important than taking the actual test, because there's a lot of practice tests that they can do without having to go and sit for the whole
Yeah,
test.
yeah. So the last two, real quick, for the fee waiver, because they're not doing the applications for free reduced lunch, can they just go to their counselor to get the fee
Yeah,
waiver?
so like at our school, well, a lot of students are direct certified for free lunch. So if I were to look a student up in my student, they might be direct certified for free lunch. And so in that case, I can give it to them. What we do at our school is, if they're not direct certified, and obviously right now they can't apply, then I will show them the criteria to get an SAT fee waiver, which has basically the income guidelines. And then if they can produce like their tax return showing those income guidelines, then I apply the fee waiver.
Okay, and then the last question, the 2+2 pathway, if you do that, are you guaranteed admission to a state school, anyone you want?
You are guaranteed admission to a state school, but not anyone you want. So if you're looking to go to FSU and UF, those are still going to be students that are getting high grades in the college courses. So every school is going to be a little bit different, but the biggest thing is you have to complete your prereqs and you have to do well in your prereqs. So, you could go look up like really any school. Like I'll just say, let's say UF transfer engineering. Like if you put that in, you'll see what the prereqs are, and it'll also tell you what GPA they're expecting for those prereqs. So some colleges, like the College of Engineering, is going to be much more competitive than the College of Arts and Sciences, where like there's psychology or criminal justice or something like that. So it's going to depend on the major of how competitive it is. And then of course, the schools that are extremely competitive for freshmen are still going to be competitive as transfers, but it's not going to be as competitive as if you were going in as a freshman level student, and you won't need test scores. So everything is going to fall to that college coursework GPA.
All right, sounds good. Again, I put the link to I'll do it one more time. The link to the document, it's her PowerPoint, Kelly's PowerPoint. Thank you very much. If you're waiting for the next session, we're going to put everybody back into the waiting room, and we'll get started soon with that session. Thanks again,
Thank you,
Kelly.
everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Can you hear me, Jen?
Yes, I can.
I'm about to share the PowerPoint. Wait, hold on.
Recording.